Hey, I'm Guy.
I'm John.
It's our YouTube channel. Subscribe to this channel and give this video a like. We appreciate it.
Podcast below in the description. Go check that out as well.
We're brought to you by DraftKings. Promo code HAM when you sign up there.
Yep. Also, American-Giant.com. Promo code HAM, 50% off. Go check it out.
All right. Okay, John. Collinsworth and Sherman. Dynamic duo. PFF. Yeah. Talked about quarterbacking. Sherman actually in the end said he'd like Justin Fields for the Niners. But in response to something Collinsworth said about Trey Lance, he kind of saw – he made a weird – not a weird. He made a connection with Kyle and Trey Lance and Colin Kaepernick. What was the context of that conversation?
Well, one comp that I had heard in NFL circles weeks ago was Kaepernick for Trey Lance. I heard Cris Collinsworth in his they're competing with us, trying to get listens on their podcast.
Competing with the world, baby.
That he compared him to Kaepernick. My guess is this with Collinsworth. I'm not saying he didn't come up with this on his own. What percent of GMs and head coaches does Cris Collinsworth have in his phone? 100%?
100%.
Well, he doesn't do
Maybe
Jags games and
guy.
stuff. Yeah. Well, he doesn't do all some of the bad teams.
Though.
Yeah. But all the teams that matter, he's talking to.
And he definitely talked to Staley from doing the Rams.
Every coach that matters, he's talking to. That is a comp that's being, in NFL circles right now. Trey Lance is Kaepernick, not Kaepernick under Chip Kelly. I'm talking about Kaepernick coming out from Nevada. People forget that, and you and me, big whack guys, Fresno State guys, how many times do you see Kaepernick live in college? 2 or 3?
No, I mean at least 4 or 5, I would say.
Every Fresno game.
Because I had a couple. I had him at Hawaii. He fumbled reaching for the pylon. Remember that play? And then I think one more in Nevada.
I saw him twice live, both times when I was at Fresno, and he kicked our ass. And then I was with the Eagles when he was coming out. And he was this fascinating prospect because he was tall. He could run. And while he wasn't accurate, he had a hose and he was productive. Like you brought up his college stats before we jumped on, and he threw over 80 touchdowns. And just watching him, they were dominant. Remember, they killed Cal. I remember senior year. Absolutely. It was like Jeff Tedford's in trouble, and that was the start of the end because they were just on a completely different level. They beat that great Boise team. I mean, he was the best player in the WAC that I think his senior year. I think he was Offensive Player of the Year. And that was a year Kellen Moore, who was also an elite player, was in there too. It was Boise's heyday. But he was like this raw prospect. Now it was different because his offense at the time, it was very revolutionary when the Niners implemented the pistol, right? It was just revolutionary in the fact that no one in the NFL was doing it. Now people in college were doing it, like Urban had stole it. A bunch of college coaches, I think, started kind of sniffing around and seeing it, and they were sent dudes to alt. The Niners eventually went to alt, stole it, and then by then, Andy sent a guy to alt. Maybe didn't Andy bring alt to the Chiefs? Remember that?
He retired, or just to have him.
Well,
I
think alt retired, and Andy brought him on as a senior consultant. People were fascinated by this guy, but part of it was it was a big separation. The thing with Trey Lance and North Dakota State, they do NFL concepts. It's all kind of, and now I'd even say the pistol and RPOs, it's all universal. What really is the difference when you watch a big college game and a big pro game? It honestly doesn't look that much different, right? Most teams, ask Juszczyk, was every team calling him to use the fullback? No, his market was probably 10 teams. So I actually think that's a positive comp, for Trey Lance. Now, the thing with Kaepernick Richard mentioned this on the podcast, was that he thought that Kyle would peak Kaepernick. And I'm not saying peak Kaepernick you take because he was a very dynamic player. But if you could choose, I don't think that's what Kyle was looking for. Because when I think Kyle, the thing he really, truly wants is, and same with McVay and same with LaFleur to me, is going to be accuracy. Because they're going to say, the majority of plays I'm dialing up, you're going to have a guy open. I'm going to need you to hit him. And I think what really frustrates, what drove McVay crazy, and I really noticed it, probably most people this year, was God, Jared Goff skips balls. One thing, an underrated part about Kaepernick, as he was coming into his own, he could always hit a trainer on the sideline. he could always throw a ball that was like, holy shit. Now, Kaepernick, unlike Goff and unlike Jimmy, could throw an 80-yard ball on a rope and hit Vernon Davis. It was like, is that the greatest throw I've ever seen?
Yeah, yeah.
Remember the NFC Championship game when it goes, Earl Thomas leaps in the air, and it was like, he's going to pick it. It goes right through his hand, hits was it Anquan?
It was I think it was Anquan, yeah.
And it was just like, oh my
God. We were at the Buffalo Wild Wings in the East Bay somewhere.
Do you remember that strike?
I do. To me, it was one of the most memorable things I've ever seen happen in sports, that play.
Yeah, I think the best throw he ever did was the one Vernon Davis in Tampa. I swear to God, it went 80 yards. It was a bomb.
Yeah.
But, like, those guys don't have that. So and that's where I think Trey Lance, it intrigues. I remember Andy was very intrigued by Kaepernick. But it just shows you, like, we've come a long way. Projects and, like, guys with just physical tools at quarterback, we're like, oh, second, third round. Now it's like, shit, you got to trade up top 15, right? It happened fast.
Yeah. But I agree with you. I don't think that Kyle would have loved like Colin as his main quarterback. But I also don't love Trey Lance Kaepernick comp. Obviously, I saw a lot more of Colin in college than I have seen of Trey Lance in college because we watched all his games on TV too. In those days, they would get TV One, though. There was only one TV. Although it was around that time that we had two big old box TVs in our living room, thanks to you. But I think a couple of things watching just from the video I've watched of Trey Lance. I mean, John, the tape I've grinded of Trey Lance. One, I could be wrong about this. This is just my initial. I don't think his arm is quite as strong as Collins was, like downfield throwing. But it's plenty good.
Kaepernick had elite arm strength.
It's plenty good. I mean, I think Trey's is probably elite. I think Trey Lance has more touch, like throws with more touch than Colin did coming out of college. Colin did not throw with touch coming out of college.
No. Touch was never something associated with Kaepernick.
I think Lance, even though you've mentioned some questions about his motion, I actually think he's a little more – he looks just a little more natural as a thrower to me than Colin was. But Colin could look pretty also. Don't get me wrong. And Trey Lance was a 67% thrower in 2019. What was Kaepernick was he 63, 62, 58?
In college he's 58 too, yeah.
Yeah, like I don't love that comp.
I think it's more the athleticism and the body type than it is the pure like numbers with the accuracy. I'm with you. This guy, just watching some YouTube highlights, clearly has more touch. Like Kaepernick, the touch thing, he was always overwhelmed, right, in pros on just like wheel route. Those things would drive him nuts. Not drive him nuts, like drive fans nuts. Because he'd fucking airmail it and hit Cris on the side. Like he just couldn't do it.
Couldn't put
any. It was almost like
under the ball on those short.
It was almost like a knob block. He just struggled throwing changeups. Where I'm with you, this guy. That's where this guy is a better prospect, probably coming out. Now, will he ever live up? Checking Trey Lance, he's basically 6'4". He's 6'3" and 7/8. I'll round up, give him 6'4". Colin was 6'4.5". So I mean, one thing Colin
Trey
had
Lance is thicker.
Colin weighed 233 pounds at the combine.
Jeez. What's Trey Lance at?
I saw 225.
God.
They're all big. I mean, there's nothing. I mean,
my head would have said, if you would ask me what's Trey Lance weigh from watching him on tape, I would have said 230.
At least the pro day, he didn't run a 40. Kaepernick ran a 4.5, which actually didn't do him justice because once he got 3 or 4 steps, what do you think he was? 4.3 guy?
Oh,
his play speed was elite.
Incredible. Yeah.
It was elite.
His strides were so long.
I'll give Scout Haberman some credit. Kaepernick, in the business, we'd call him tight. We'd call him stiff. He never juked anyone. Now, if you gave – and that's what part of Cris Alt's offense was lanes, right? And that's Kyle's offense with running backs, lanes. They don't need you to be able to juke. They need you to get downhill. When the lane hit, Kaepernick was gone. I do just watching, again, FCS opponents. Lance is much more of a fluid athlete.
I agree.
So they're not – it's not a black and white comparison in the sense of they're perfect, right? They're just like the identical prospects. But I do understand some of the similarities between the two of them. I actually find some of Trey Lance's more accuracy I would want a guy, if I'm going to have a running quarterback, to be more fluid than straight line. Like part of like what made Michael Vick or E. Kyler, it's like, Jesus Christ, these guys are like little video game characters.
Yeah, part of it is if you can go 8 yards because you made a guy miss consistently, that's better than sometimes being able to go 80. Although I think Trey Lance could go 80. Because that skill is going to be more useful. It's a good question. It's hard. I mean, I say he plays fast watching him, but I don't know who's really chasing him.
Well, like I think a good example is Fields. And this is my Fields McNabb. Like McNabb was just an athlete, right? Not a stiff. He was a basketball athlete, but he was football big, and then he was a quarterback. Lance, Fields, unlike the Kaepernick Trey, even though Trey Lance probably closer to Fields, like these guys are elusive athletes.
Right.
Now the main difference, if I told you Trey Lance, and maybe the reason he didn't run, he's like, I'm probably a 4.6 guy, which is fast if I'm 4.60. But if I want to get compared to Justin Fields, this guy's like, yeah, fucking run 4.41, right?
Yeah.
I'd run too, because if you're Trey Lance, would you agree like 4.60 is it's a negative, even though it is a positive relative to the guy you're going against?
Yeah.
At 4.41, I think changes like, oh, should we run?
Well, again, how does it help you? It only helps you if it blows everybody away.
Justin Fields had to be licking his lips when he's like, oh, time for a run the 40?
Fast guys run, baby. Like you always said. Fast guys run. My ultimate point on this, while I don't agree that Kyle would have loved Kaepernick, I do think he would like Trey Lance.
I think there is more to like coming out of college in Trey Lance as the project than Kaepernick, which was took much more of a vision.
And there was plenty to like, as we saw. I mean, he led a team to the Super Bowl.
I think Kaepernick took a lot more vision, and the vision included bringing what he did, right? Part of what Kaepernick's success in the NFL came behind the pistol.
I would
love
it
came
to go
with
back
what he was comfortable.
And ask the Niners then, like, are you drafting this guy because you think he can be a starter in the NFL? Like, did they envision what it became?
Well, when you take a guy at whatever 36 or 38,
you have to have some plan for it, right?
Yes.
And it's not crazy in retrospect, just when you look back, and some of his highlight plays were just people don't have that in the bag at all.
Well, and ultimately the overall conversation with the quarterbacks, you want to be able to say, like, everywhere Sean McDermott goes, my guy has stuff in the bag that only Mahomes has in the bag, and Rodgers, right?
Right.
Like that is a powerful feeling. Now, ideally, I think Kyle and any football guy would say, well, yeah, is the guy a good player? Then he has stuff in the bag. That's the ideal, right? You want a guy that's a good player and then has things in the bag. That it's like you see Jacob deGrom's numbers, win or lose. It's like he's just got pitches. He can just do things that people dream about doing.
Well,
like
DeGrom's John, that's a great freaking comp, because it's about like where that comes into play is it's game 1 of the World Series, and the other team has the best hitters in baseball. Like, it's great that you won 8 games in March and June. And this is what we're talking about with the quarterbacks. It's like, okay, you get to the Super Bowl and you get to the playoffs, and now you're playing the best teams every week.
That's where I think if my offseason with the Bills, even though we kind of got pushed around in the AFC Championship game, I go, you know what the least of our worries is? Our quarterback matching up with Mahomes. Even though if our guy's not as good as their guy, but we know our guy can hang. Our defense has to be better. We have to just have a better idea how to, corral Tyreek and Kelsey, but like our quarterback can hang, right? And that's, if you can go to sleep at night with that thought process, that's really what everyone's looking for, right? Like, if you're the Packers, like, this is where Aaron Rodgers is just not a bad thing that he's stuck in your team, but why he's not going anywhere. He's if your quarterback's the least of your worries, you can build a team from there and compete to just, at minimum, make the playoffs, which is you make the playoffs in the NFL consistently, you get contract extensions, you make $10 million a year.
Well, that's the bottom line of the whole thing is, if you hit on your quarterback, eventually he's going to be so expensive that he has to make your team better, not just be another cog. He's got to make the other guys around him better because he's going to be really expensive. That's what it's all. If there were no salary caps, it would matter less, but there are.
I think it's a great question on Dak. Like, his physical tools, like, he's big, he's a super high character leader, arms pretty good, but it's like, is he just going to dominate the league? Or to me, he's going to be one of the most fascinating test cases in the league history the next 3 or 4 years.
Yep.
Like, does he go to 3 Pro Bowls and it's clearly not his fault if they miss some playoffs, right? Or do they go to the playoffs because of him? Or are they going like 7-9, 8-8 because he's or excuse me, add that extra game. But and it's like, God,
I hate that game.
I know it really throws me off.
Wait till we're going.
I'm just gonna go 8-8 plus 1.
Yeah. Wait till you're 7-11. That one will be painful.
There's
Go
gonna be a
another game.
coach that has back-to-back 7-11s, and we're just gonna nickname like the Slurpee.
But we're gonna be looking at like some the Slurpee. You're gonna be looking at like some Football Reference in 10 years. Be like, oh, they won 7 games in that year. Just like, look, some coach won 7 games 4 years in a row in the early 2000s. You'd be like, yeah, but he only lost 9. This guy lost 11.
Exactly.
The Slurpee.